Good evening, everyone. Again, I trust everyone is dinner as well as conversation. I trust everyone is enjoying your dinner and good conversation all round. Now we have come to the highlight of tonight's event. So apart from the distinguished fellowship, the first highlight, the second highlight is this one, which is a dialogue with our senior minister. Now I'm mindful of time, so I'm going to set the format. In the format I'll explain to you is that I will be carrying on the dialogue. I will be asking a series of questions to Senior Minister. And these questions are basically centered around three broad areas which I have in mind. And that is on geopolitical things. And then the second issue is on climate change. As you know, I am an environmental economist, and so I will be interested to ask questions on the environment. And the third one has to do, I think everyone will be interested, which is domestic issues. So we start out with the external environment and then move on finally with the Singapore local environment, okay? Now, after the dialogue, when I finish conversing, I will then open it to the floor for a few of you to ask questions. Again, I'm mindful of time, so please, we all keep our questions short and targeted, all right? So let's begin. Senior Minister, again, thank you very much for spending time with us and coming to this event. And I want to start off with the first question, which is, as you know, you look at the Liberation Day of Trump, mainly the tariffs, right? That was actually in April this year. And we have seen major shifts and departures from what we are used to see as past norms. So as an economist, we like to ask the question, is comparative advantage dead in view of all the trade protectionism and so on? And how does that impact international growth? Please.
Well, first of all, Houston, thank you very much for inviting me and also for honoring me with a Distinguished Fellow Award. You have now given me a high reputation to live up to. I shall try my best. On Liberation Day and international trade, I don't think comparative advantage is dead. America has decided that they want to take a more narrow, bilateral, transactional view of international trade. Other countries still have a framework of the WTO, imperfect in many ways, but enabling quite extensive and quite free trade amongst them. And I think many countries want to preserve as much of that as possible. We will have to see whether that's possible, because when you have one of the biggest economies in the world taking a radically different approach and really not just withdrawing from, but expressing its disapproval of the WTO system, that will have repercussions, and we will have to see how the eventual situation shakes out. But one thing I have learned in government is that you can fail to follow an economic principle, but you cannot repeal an economic law. Whether you follow it or not, the economic law exists. That's just the way the world works. That's just the way human societies work. And if you don't follow it, well, you may have your reasons, and you want to override it and do something different. But market forces, incentives for people to act in certain ways in their own interest, for countries to act in their own interest, are very powerful and very difficult to just chop off. You close here, it pops up somewhere else. You close there, it pops up somewhere else again. You think you've achieved an objective, something else happens and you're chasing your tail. So I think that we are certainly, from an economic point of view, worse off now than before the 2nd of April, globally. But it's yet to be seen how things will turn out.
So I'm glad you mentioned that, well, you said that comparative advantage is still on, but it is evolving. I think it's evolving. And what do you think what is the new framework on the global economy, and what can we do in Singapore too?
I suppose the best framework is the world temporarily -1. Meaning the framework mostly remains. America, it still has to do business with the world. You still need rare earths. You still need all sorts of things from the other countries. But, well, for the time being, you wish the rules were different and you're trying your best to change it. Temporarily, meaning maybe at some point they can come back and participate again in a more open and constructive way. But that's the best possible scenario. It may or may not happen. Meanwhile, what can countries do? Well, you can make friends with like-minded partners within a region like ASEAN, within a broader area like the Regional Economic, RCEP, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, or with economies which complement each other and have a broader range like the CPTPP. And I think we can also work together on the WTO framework, like-minded countries, how to make the WTO work without being paralyzed by consensus gridlock, which has been one of the big problems, whether or not the Americans are part of the party. And to be able to participate and have enough of a consensus of countries to say we move ahead. Not everybody is along, and some countries are not comfortable. Well, that's all right. The rest of us, let's move ahead. And we've got some progress on that in a few modest areas, and I hope that more of that can be done. We should try and make the multilateral framework less bad rather than write it off.
I think however much we like economic principles to apply and how much we worship economics actually, but we are limited by geopolitical constraints as always. So these are a reminder to us that that we have to work within the political constraints as well, not just focusing on economic efficiency. But this suggests that we need a lot of diversification, all right, in terms of diversifying out of our reliance to the usual sources like for the US and so on. There are lots of markets which are unexplored at this point in time, and I think this gives us an opportunity to look at all these markets.
We should do that. You should diversify within the region. You should diversify to fresh markets. Latin America, we have talked about, hasn't gone very far with us yet. The African continent is a very diverse continent. It's 50 plus countries, but some of them are promising. And we should explore all these new opportunities.
Precisely. So anyway, I mean, this impact of tariffs, could it be temporary, meaning that as long as Trump is in office, when he goes out...
No, I do not believe that. I do not believe that. It will not remain like this, but it will not go back to the status quo ante. In trade policy, in economic policy, once you make a move, you can't take it back. There are consequences. When you first put in the tariffs, everybody complains. The people who need steel say, why is the steel so expensive? The people who need chips, who make chips say, why can't I sell to China? Why can't I import my chips from Taiwan? Whatever. But once you have put in the tariffs, and once new players come who depend on the tariffs and need the tariff protection, and you say, I'm taking the tariffs away, we're going back to where we were, it's politically not possible. And all politically not possible because the businesses with vested interests will complain. Politically not possible because then you will be attacked and say, you know, your predecessor did this to protect us. Why are you unilaterally giving away a chip? You must bargain for something. Which is what happened when Biden took over from Trump #1. Trump 1 put in tariffs against China. Biden didn't take them away. In fact, he tightened the screws on China more. And when there was a debate between Trump and Kamala Harris last year during the campaign, Kamala says, you know, if Trump comes in so many tariffs, then the world will turn upside down. And Trump's answer was, Well, in my first term, I put on tariffs on China. It's now 3.5 years into Biden. The tariffs are still there. How's that? There was no answer.
Well, anyways, I think Singapore is not so badly affected yet.
Well, the Chinese have a saying, 50步笑100步. The person who retreated 50 steps from the battle laughs at the person who retreated 100 steps, and you're worse off than me. But actually, we have a free trade agreement with the US. It's a zero. We have imports from the US, 0% tariff. Now the US has decided that Singapore has 10% tariffs like everybody else, and we console ourselves that that's the best rate, and we hope that we stay there. I suppose if you treat the world as the way it is, and ask, could it be worse? It could be worse. But is it better than we were before? I am more skeptical.
Okay. All right. I think there's a lot to be said on tariffs and so on. I want to move on to this another related concept to the external environment, which is the subject of global warming. Global warming and climate change has always challenged us meaning mankind. And in fact, right now, it's even worse because we have all this deglobalization, trade, all this protectionism, non-global cooperation, where we need global cooperation for something as widely and broadly, and the whole world must be involved, but we are not having it. So we are retreating. So a few countries have managed to get together and they say, let's try to do something. But I don't think that's enough. Do you agree?
Well, first of all, global warming is an inherently very difficult problem to solve. If you just look at it from an economic perspective, you would call it a global commons problem, meaning it's a resource which we all share, which we all benefit from, but which we are not personally paying for. And you therefore need to solve it by coming together in order to do it collectively. But when you do it collectively, there's always the risk of somebody opting out and saying, sorry, you carry on, I will just free ride on your hard work and your sacrifices and your belt tightening. And that's called a free rider problem. And whether or not one big country opts out from the Paris Agreement, we have the risk of a free rider problem. What do we do about it? Well, in principle, even if one country opts out, the other countries should do the sensible things. And there are some studies which show that China is big enough, even without counting benefits to the rest of the world, just costs and benefits to themselves, they should cut emissions in order to reduce the impact on themselves. What more if it is possible for China, maybe India, maybe EU, maybe Brazil? This is a dream package. But in principle, what more if other countries can come together, like-minded, agree amongst themselves on rules which will reduce their emissions, whether they do a carbon tax or whatever rule, and then have some mechanism to deal with free riders, such as border adjustment tariffs, I think they call it. So that amongst ourselves, we abide by rules. If you're selling into me and you didn't cost your carbon when you want to come into my market, I will tax you. And that way, hopefully, you'll reduce a free rider problem and you can get a bit further. So economically, you can get maybe 3/4 of a solution. But politically, it's very hard because then the other countries will say, look at that fellow, he is free riding on us and I can't quite levy enough price on him. Why should I tighten my belt? In fact, some Southeast Asian countries have already said that. If America is going to be like this, I have to reconsider my commitments. In fact, Singapore has to take a practical view of it, and we have made commitments to go to net zero by 2050 and to go to, I think, half our emissions by a certain date before that. And we have had to say we are doing this on condition everybody else is playing ball. But if other people are not playing ball, then it does not make sense for us to stop breathing in order not to generate CO2. Because even if we did that in Singapore, it won't save the world.
That's right. Actually, SM, you're very right. And not many people appreciate this, that Singapore actually is quite exemplary and in our contribution to the global cause. We are contributing only 0.11% of the carbon emissions. So even if we stop everything, it makes not much impact, But yet we are doing it. And we have put in the right measures, I think, with adaptation and so on.
We are trying to be a good global citizen,
Yes.
do our part so that we are in good standing. We are not free riding on other people.
Yes.
And we should try and do it in a rational way. We have put in a carbon tax. It's going up. I think it's going to about $50 by 2030. It is going to be a cost on the economy. It may cause some businesses to have to reconsider their plans if they're not able to abate their emissions. But if we are serious about wanting to peak before 2030 and to decline progressively after that, then there's really no alternative to many businesses really emitting less, or some businesses deciding, I can't emit less, well, I have to reconsider my plans altogether. There's no way out. If everybody can do it without pain, then you probably haven't done very much.
That's right. The other thing, Hassan, is that we have recently discovered geothermal energy source. And this time it's possibly deep enough and with the right temperature. So it might be a game changer.
Well, I hope so. But our electricity consumption or electricity production is about 10 gigawatts. And if we are lucky, if we work very hard, you can get 50 megawatts out of the ground. So it's helpful, but I think we need to work harder.
Okay, I mean, these are really tough issues for us. But let's move on to, I think, a topic which probably everyone is eagerly waiting for SM at least to discuss some of these local issues, domestic issues. So we have a room full of economists. Well, most are economists, studied economics, career in economics, applying economics. No? So, SM, do you think understanding economics by government officers, officials, and also by people in general is very important for the country?
Yes, of course.
So we got SM to say confirmation. Economics is very important.
Yes, of course. Not just because I'm here, but that is the reason I'm here. It is not the only perspective on the world, but if you don't understand that, you're going to have a lot of misunderstandings which are going to cause you a lot of problems. Mm-hmm. In the government, many of the ministries must understand the economic forces at work and consequences of what they are doing. It's not just MTI and MOF, but MSE, looking after climate and water supplies. MOM, looking after manpower. MND, looking after land planning, housing. Ministry of Health. All of the ministries actually ought to have inside them somewhere in their thinking inner core an element of economic input so that they can understand the economic forces at work, what are the incentives they have to deal with, what are the externalities of their policies, how they can use market forces and harness these incentives rather than disregarding the market forces and say, you just stop doing that and think that that solves the problem. Mm. So amongst the government, you need that. Amongst the population, you also need that, because then when the government imposes a policy or implements a policy, people can understand what it is about, and you may not like it, but at least you have some feel for the explanation, and you accept that, okay, that cannot be helped. One of the things we have to explain, for example, is why is water so expensive in Singapore? And the economist's answer is because we are pricing water to its marginal production price, not the average price. You take water from the reservoir built 100 years ago is cheap, But you take one extra liter, the reservoir has run out of capacity. I must produce one extra liter. I must build a new reservoir. I may need to make new water. I may need to make desalination. It costs me $2 per cubic meter. I have to price that. The marginal, incremental unit price. And everybody should pay that, even for your first cubic meter. So the economists understand that. The public, not so much. And so we have these debates, not just with the public, but even in Parliament. And we have to explain this. And we also have to do things which help people to accept the policy, beyond just swallowing the explanation. For example, we have USAFE. We did this. I did USAFE when, in 1997 or thereabouts, we made a radical price revision to water. It was 50 cents per cubic meter, and over a period of 2 or 3 years, I pushed it to $1.50. Because it had to reflect scarcity, and at that time, there was some questions being raised about the security of our water imports. Quite fierce statements were being made. And so people understood we needed to do it, but to soften it, ease it in, we said, okay, USAFE. You pay for the water, but I give you a grant. Every month, you save X dollars for those who need it. I think middle income and below, thereabouts. So many dollars. You need the water, this helps you to pay for it. You don't need the water, just keep it, it's for you. So I don't distort your incentive. I have not made the water cheap. Water is expensive, but you are okay. Now, that's quite a complicated argument. But tonight is the economic society, so I'm trying it on you.
That's why you see SM, understanding economics is so important, from basic principles of trade-offs, opportunity costs, incentives, and now we just mentioned marginalism.
If we had not done this, we could not have done new water or desalination, because actually that is what it is costing us to make the additional supplies, and if people are not paying that amount for what they are consuming, those projects would not have been economic.